Perfect. Well, good evening, everyone. So very excited to talk to you about a very important topic. And actually, it's a good segue after we learned a great deal about Dropbox and what's going on from their Chief Trust Officer, which I love that title, by the way. So my name is Bob Gilbert. I'm a guy with also a strange title, Chief Evangelist at a company called Netskope. And we're in this category called Cloud Access Security Broker. And what I wanted to do today is not give you a company pitch, but I want to really go over what is kind of the state of the union with regards to cloud security and introduce you to where the innovations are taking place and give you some best practices around cloud and specifically this world called Saas. So just a little bit of a starting point. You know, it's an explosive market right now. There's more than 10,000 cloud apps out there. That's a pretty crazy number to get your arms around. When you actually look at those cloud apps, it's an interesting scenario in that there's actually more than 700 cloud apps on average in a given enterprise. These are actually running on your network. And when you look at these applications, it's an interesting scenario where there's a variety of applications. Yes, there's the Dropboxes of the world. There's also the other applications that IT often doesn't know about. There's the sanction applications that IT does know about. But regardless of whether they're sanctioned or unsanctioned, what we found is that 90% of those cloud apps are not enterprise ready. And I'll talk about what that term enterprise ready means in just a few moments. But that presents a potential risk associated with using those cloud apps. So how do cloud applications get in? So when you look at 700 plus cloud apps per enterprise, about 10% of those are sanctioned. So they're the Dropbox for Business. It's the Office 365 suite, Salesforce.com. So IT has basically sanctioned those applications, supports them, secures them, and basically delivers them to users. 90% of those applications are basically unsanctioned. And when you look at those variety of applications, they're either brought in by lines of business, maybe the marketing team, the finance organization has adopted their own SaaS applications to get their business done. And then part of those applications are brought in by the users. You can argue that a lot of that adoption takes place by mobile phones, right? Downloading the SaaS app of the day, enabling you to basically get your job done. So with all of this cloud usage, what does that mean to us as security practitioners from a risk standpoint? So what I want to talk to you about today are really kind of these four vectors of risk when it comes to cloud app usage. Now, the first one, we all understand is this notion of what applications are running in my environment. If there's more than 700 cloud applications and 90% of them are not enterprise ready, that presents a potential risk. Now, when I think about enterprise ready, there's really, you look at the Cloud Security Alliance, Cloud Controls Matrix, combined with Netskope's security team, have basically put together this 7 factors of risk and 40 different criteria that make up an enterprise readiness score. So they look at things like, let me see, from an inherent security capability, does this app that's being used on your environment, when your users store data in that app, do they support encryption of that data at rest? That's one of the key tenets. Does the data center that SaaS provider hosts their application, is it SOC compliant? They'll also do things like look at the terms and conditions of that SaaS provider and determine if you host your data in that SaaS provider, who owns the data? Do you own the data, or does now the SaaS provider own the data? You'd be surprised in how many cases the actual SaaS provider owns the data. So there's literally like 40 plus criteria that are looked at that go into an enterprise readiness score, and it happens to be that 90% of apps do not really meet that enterprise readiness needs. So that's applications. Amongst themselves present a potential risk. Then there's the other side of it, and I heard a little discussion earlier What about the users? Are users themselves a risk when it comes to cloud usage? There's some smirks going on here. And there's really two types of users, right? There's the users that do stuff just because they're not very smart. You also have users that might do stuff maliciously. They're about to leave the company and they're going to log into Salesforce with their corporate credentials, pull down all that juicy customer data and download and upload it to their Dropbox, right? So you have all of these different cases. The other challenge, and this was a great discussion earlier, is around this notion of compromised credentials. And there's a research that shows that 15% of users using the cloud have had their credentials compromised. So if there's 700 cloud apps being used on your network by users, and 15% of those users have had their credentials compromised, you need to start thinking about two-factor authentication or a mechanism to actually look at which credentials have actually been compromised. So that presents a big challenge from a user standpoint. Now, from an activity standpoint, and this is obviously tied to the users, and getting back to users don't do the smartest things always, is, let's face it, the cloud makes it easy to share. Anytime, anywhere access to data, facilitates collaboration, productivity. It's a great thing, but with great things comes great responsibility, right? And the fact that users are accidentally uploading sensitive data to their Dropbox presents a potential risk. The other challenge when it comes to activities is, there's a lot of activities going on with the cloud. Just because somebody's sharing something doesn't mean that's a bad thing, obviously. So when do you detect when something is an anomaly or not? Anomaly might be, user logging in to multiple cloud apps from thousands of miles away within a short window of time, and wow, there may be an account hijacking situation that presents itself. There might also be an admin anomaly. An admin has never logged into a finance app before, and all of a sudden they log into a finance app. Wonder why they're doing that. So being able to understand not only the risky activities, but when things are outside of the norm to help you really dissect and get to when things might be risky. And then finally, the fourth vector is this notion of data, right? You can argue that data really is the cornerstone of any organization. And whether we're talking about apps, users, or activities, data is tied to all of those things. And being able to understand what is the sensitive nature of the data that's being used in the cloud is really paramount to a cloud security strategy. And the stats are actually pretty scary. 18% of files in cloud applications constitute a policy violation. And there's a lot of different violations. There may be, there's a protected health information. Might be worrisome if it's a healthcare organization. PCI information might be worrisome if it's a retail organization. Personally identifiable information. There's all these violations, and 18% of files have these violations. You combine that with the fact that 22% of those files are actually shared publicly. Again, the greatness that comes with the cloud is that anytime, anywhere access to data, a couple mouse clicks, and I could share with the world, which is great, but it's also scary in the wrong hands. So I'm not trying to paint a doom and gloom. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not a perimeter security vendor and tell you to block everything. But there is a catch-22 that we have. Let's face it. This is the elephant in the room. Do you simply, to cover all of those four risk vectors of apps, users, activities, and data, do you maybe just go to your perimeter security firewall, Palo Alto, and just do a rule to let's block all cloud traffic? Right? That may be one approach. Some people still do that, believe it or not. But the catch-22 is, do you do that, or do you enable all of this goodness that you get from the cloud to be more productive and just conduct better business? So my company, this is really the only slide that I'm going to talk about my company before I give a little demo at the end. Our mantra is allow is the new block. Yeah, we got a rock star marketing team. Orange is the new black. I get it. But the notion is we say, don't block cloud apps. What you want to do is you want to block the risky activities. If you have 1,000 Dropbox users on your network, which is very commonplace, I see it across a lot of our customers, are you going to put in a rule to block 1,000 Dropbox users? How about finding the 2 users that are uploading sensitive data to Dropbox and block those activities instead, enabling all of the goodness for Dropbox to take place? And that's really what I'm going to talk about today. And to wrap around that, I'm going to talk about really 6 steps that's going to help you mitigate cloud app risk without having to block everything. And that's kind of the gist of what I want to talk about. So the first one is the first step that we're all going to take. This is the notion, the first thing. I talked about 700 plus cloud apps on average per enterprise. Some of you have thousands. Some of you have several hundreds. The first step is you want to understand what cloud apps are running in your environment and then assess the enterprise readiness of those cloud apps. So that's the first step. The next step is you want to understand the usage details. What are people doing with these cloud apps? Just the fact that I get a list of cloud apps running is a good first step, but oh my gosh, you got to find out how they're being used so ultimately you could start piecing together this intelligence so you can make decisions later on. So, yesterday's technology, perimeter security, you can see that, oh yeah, there's Dropbox running. Oh my gosh, there's been 1.6 terabytes of data that's been uploaded and 3.4 terabytes of data that's been downloaded. And that's basically what you get. How are you going to act on that level of data? You really need to understand the users, what they're doing, what type of data they're working on, and the risky activities associated with that. So let me look at traditional perimeter security versus this new world of cloud security 2.0. So with perimeter security, again, it's a kind of a subset of applications that you're going to be able to discover. You're going to get byte level information, basic session information, but you really need cloud security 2.0 to identify all cloud apps running in your environment and then get details on the specific enterprise readiness score, the activities, and what content and data is associated with those activities. So being able to really get into the details. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. So if we look at a typical flow here where we have identity, app, activity, and data, perimeter security, you start with the web session. You can get information about the login. Here's this user, Mary at Acme, IP addresses, going to box.com in this particular example. And basically, Mary is going to, from a perimeter security, we see HTTP gets, posts, and thanks for the box reference, I know. Just delete, connect, so you get this really high-level information. You get bytes up and bytes down is what you're getting from a data. So you get some level of information, but not a lot to act on. Now, you contrast that with perimeter security 2.0, and you get a plethora of information. First, you get not only the user's login from a corporate credential standpoint, but you can also actually get the user's information about their login for that particular application. You also get information about the actual application, where the user was located, the context of what they're sharing. So if they're sharing a document with someone outside of your organization, you get visibility into that. And then when you move over to the application, not only do you get visibility into the application, but you get visibility into, wait a minute, is that a personal Dropbox or is that a corporate Dropbox? How do you differentiate between that? Cloud Security 2.0 uses this notion called app instances, where you can actually tell on your network what is personal Dropbox versus Dropbox for business. That's going to be very important later as we talked about privacy. When you do policies, maybe you don't want to do policies on the personal Dropbox. Maybe you want to focus on Dropbox for business. So you need to be able to get visibility into those. From an activity standpoint, being able to look at bytes up and bytes down is not enough. You need to get all of the details, such as logins, When was it an upload? When was it a download? When was it a share? When did somebody edit and view content? Being able to look at 25 different activities is going to be very important as you start thinking about putting together your remediation plan. And then from a data standpoint, being able to look at what type of content is associated with that activity. Was there a DLP policy violation involved, right? Again, is it PCI, PII? Is that sensitive data? Not just that it was some bytes up and bytes down is very important. So you get a bunch of information with regards to cloud usage that you need in order to take the next step. And the next step is going to be this ongoing notion of monitoring activities, detecting anomalies. We talked about doing things, detecting when things are outside of the norm, and then conducting forensics. So Cloud Security 2.0 is all about providing tools that give you anomaly detection and also tools so you can piece together things like audit trails. So for that user that's logging into Salesforce with their corporate credentials, pulling down customer data, and then turning around, logging into Dropbox with their personal credentials and uploading data, you want to be able to piece that as an audit trail so you can track it and remediate. So step 4 out of 6 is this notion of finding sensitive data. Now this is very important. There's 2 parts to finding sensitive data. The 360-degree part is that you need to look for sensitive data that's not only resident in a cloud app, that's actually stored in the cloud app, but you also need to find sensitive data that's tied to an activity. So somebody uploading sensitive data, somebody downloading sensitive data, somebody sharing sensitive data. So real-time activities as well as being able to deal with data that's resident in a cloud app. And then finally, step 5 is very, very critical. Now that you get this wealth of information about the activities, the data, the users, the activity, all of that goodness, you need to now take that detail and put it in action and actually put policies in place to mitigate your risk and enforce good behavior, if you will. So give you an example again, perimeter security. Their granularity is allow versus block. It's a binary decision. With Cloud Security 2.0, you take in context everything from users to devices, to the location they're at, to the activity they're performing and the data type, and put that into a policy so you can be very specific and not have the collateral damage that you have with the 998 Dropbox users. So this gives you an example of the type of policies that you could put in place with Cloud Security 2.0. So quarantine PII data uploaded to risky cloud storage apps. So here you get, because you get visibility into what the data is, the activity is uploaded, and the actual application, you can actually look at apps that have a low cloud confidence index or a low enterprise readiness score, put that into policy. Or perhaps you want to allow marketing and support teams to post to social media, but boy, I'm worried about that finance team. They should not be posting to social media when they're on our corporate network. So being able to get, again, laser focused on policies. Or don't allow data marked confidential to be shared outside of the company. Maybe you allow it to be shared internally, but externally you don't want to. And then alert users using their personal Dropbox to use a sanctioned Dropbox for Business account instead and make that an automated workflow. And that actually ties to the 6th and last step that's very, 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 very important. And this is basically coaching users. So being able to identify when users are doing risky behaviors and be able to coach them to do the right thing. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, instead of summarizing this, because I'm talking talking a lot here, I want to give you a demo of this technology from Netskope that is actually Cloud Security 2.0. So let me minimize this here. And the first thing I want to do, a couple use cases I want to show you. Now, the first use case is this notion of discovery. Again, the first step that I talked about, the customers take where they want to basically discover what cloud apps are running on their environment. So Netskope provides that capability. So in this particular example, I'm logged into a Netskope cloud tenant, and in the last 90 days, we have 753 cloud apps used by 379 users. You get robust analytics, so you get the top applications, top users, the top devices that those users are using. From here, I can actually go in and drill into, do forensics and get a variety of details. But what I want to do is I want to assess my risk associated with all of these cloud apps. So I'm going to go into the Cloud Confidence Index. So this is where Netskope provides a database of more than 10,000 cloud apps. We have a dedicated research team that basically researches these cloud apps and assesses an enterprise readiness score based on 40+ criteria, 7 risk factors. We take in the Cloud Security Alliance's Cloud Controls Matrix. And so this is great. You can actually use this database just for vetting new cloud apps if you want. It's like consumer reports for your cloud apps, if you will. But what I'm going to do in this particular case is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to look at discovered apps in my environment to find out what's running and what is the score for those apps. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a category of apps, and I'm going to do cloud storage, and I'm going to say, show me the low-scoring cloud storage apps running in my environment. There are some scary apps here. This app called Droppler, it looks like. That sounds very popular. That is scoring a 49. So that is red. It's out of 100. So this is very, very risky. What I can also do is I could say, you know what, let me compare that to another application like this application called Dropbox. I got to give Dropbox plugs since I talked about Box earlier. So, Dropbox is obviously green. It's got great security controls around it. So we got to keep that in mind that we have Droppler used on our network, and that could pose some potential risks associated with that. And we can drill down and look into all the details and what have you. So discovery is a key component. The next part of the demo that I want to show you, however, is now that you've discovered these cloud apps and you've assessed your risk, what can we actually do to stop sensitive data from being uploaded to a sanctioned cloud app? So in this case, I have Dropbox for Business, and I'm a typical user here, and I'm going to expand this a little bit, and I have this document that, oh my gosh, that looks like social security numbers. This is everybody's social security number in this room. I hacked you before. No, I'm just kidding. These are just made up fictitious social security numbers. But here I have a user that basically drags a file containing sensitive data to Dropbox. And there in just a second, I was able to basically upload this sensitive content. I can share it with anyone, anytime, anywhere, access to data. This is what keeps many security practitioners up at night. So what can I do to address this particular situation? So with Netskope, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to open this up here, and I'm going to go into the policy engine. This is very powerful. Now, what I can do is I can create a new policy, and it's a step through here where I can specify identity of users. I can go ahead and specify it ties into Active Directory. So if I want to just do the finance department, marketing team, R&D team, et cetera, I could do that. I'm going to leave that by default, so all users. I can also do by device. So if I only want to target users on iOS, I can apply policy for mobile users as well. Or I can do specific operating systems or desktops, et cetera. I'm going to leave that blank, so any device. I can also do location, so network location or geographic location. If I want a policy just for data that's sourced in Germany that's going somewhere else, I could do a policy just for our German constituents. But I'm going to leave that blank, so any location. And then from an application standpoint, what I want to go ahead and do is I have a variety of options. I can go ahead and specify basically an application category, so I can do cloud storage, and I'm just about done here. I can also do a application instance, so I could specify, corporate Dropbox for Business versus personal Dropbox, or I could specify an application. So in this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and say Dropbox, And the next I'm going to do is I'm going to enable DLPs. So Netskope has a very powerful DLP engine built in. 3,000 data identifiers, 500 file types, custom regular expression, proximity, fingerprinting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable this, and I have out-of-the-box profiles. So I'm going to enable personally identifiable information, and then I'm going to tie that to an activity. So in this case, I'm going to do uploads of PII. And now I have a number of actions that I could take on this. I could simply alert the admin and not do anything for the user. I can block the user, and they get a notification, and it's custom, by the way. You can do a template if you want to coach them. I can also do a user alert, which will basically make users part of the workflow. So I can enable them to justify their actions, or I can quarantine the data to a folder so it could be approved and part of that workflow. So I'm going to do user alert, and then I'm going to name this policy, and I'm going to be done in 45 seconds. PII uploads to Dropbox and user justify. So as soon as I create a policy and I do apply changes, and let's see, sometimes this takes 30 seconds or so to kick in, but let's see if we're able to catch it right now. So I'm that same user with that risky document. Oh my gosh, you know what? I forgot to enable my SE back there is going to kill me. I forgot to enable my client. So I have Netskope running on here. So now it's enabled. Let's see if it... And show you here. And show you what the looks like. So now I get a prompted basically for the justification window. Netskope was able to real-time basically see that transaction from the user, and based on the actual policy that was in place, we noticed that there was sensitive data. We were able to block it and basically present the user with the opportunity to justify their actions. So there you have it. With Netskope, you're able to get visibility into what cloud apps are running, assess your risk, and then be able to take action and covering all of your risk associated with applications, users, activities, and data. And that's it. Right.